Thank you, Amantera, for sponsoring this episode. Amantera is a credible source of legal psychoactive plants and extracts, most notably Amanita muscaria mushrooms. If you are personally curious to try some Amanita muscaria yourself, or you'd like to try any of their other products, you can check out Amantera at jameswjesso.com/AMENTARA, Amantera. If you use the promo code ATTM22, you'll get 22% off your first order. And now, here's the episode. Hello and welcome back to Adventures Through the Mind. This is a podcast that explores topics relevant and related to psychedelic culture, medicine, spirituality, and research, and always with the underlying question of how can we work with and through our psychedelic experiences to become better people, not just for ourselves, but for all those with whom we are nested in relationship, presently and across time, human and non-human alike. I'm your host, as always, James W. Jesso, although not as always, I'm presently battling a cold, so you have to forgive my raspy voice, maybe a bit nasally. Nevertheless, here we are. This is episode 206 of the podcast, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into extended state DMT, also called DMTx. DMT is a dimethyltryptamine. It's an incredibly powerful, quick, and short-acting psychedelic. And the full details as to what DMTx is, what it does, what it's all about, how it works, and so on, is what this interview is about. So I'm not going to talk about it here. The gist of it, though, is that DMTx is an intravenous delivery technology that allows people to enter into the DMT state for up to hours at a time, where otherwise the experience would only last just a few minutes. Our guests for this episode are Hayley, Mann, and Kevin Thorbahn. They run DreamMind Labs, which is one of extremely few number of places that you can experience DMTx in the world outside of a clinical trial. They're on the show to talk about what DMTx is, how it works, what people experience, why people choose to undergo the experience, how long people stay in the state for, at what dose level, what they get out of the experience, and where DMTx as a technology and as an experience may fit in the growing psychedelic medical and personal use landscape. We also talk about the legal situation in Colorado regarding psychedelics that allows DreamMind Labs to legally offer DMTx, some of the dangers present in undergoing a DMTx experience, the nearly universal experience of encountering and communicating with entities or aliens under the effects, as well as, and I'm sure some of you will get this, and if you don't get what I'm about to say, you should be excited for what you're about to hear about, the DMT Laser Thing, as I called it in the interview. We're also going to talk about the role of music and sound during DMTx sessions, and some of the weirder things they, as facilitators, have experienced in these sessions. So this was a very interesting and exciting interview for me. I found and find DMTx to be just such a curious thing. And I also found Hayley and Kevin very easy and joyful to talk with. This is probably one of the most at ease and sort of quote myself I've been in an interview, or I've felt myself as being in an interview in a very long time. And I'm looking forward to sharing the show with you. And this is it. Here we are. Now I'm about to share that interview with you. So here's my interview with Hayley, Mann, and Kevin Thorbahn on episode 206 of Adventures Through the Mind, all about DMTx. Enjoy. Hayley, Mann, and Kevin Thorbahn, welcome to Adventures Through the Mind.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
So we're going to be talking about DMTx today, also known as extended state DMT, which the two of you are offering legally in Colorado. But before we get into DMTx, you know, what it is, what it does, how it works, and so on and so forth, I want to start with why it is possible for the two of you to be legally providing what is in much of the global north and even federally in the United States an illegal substance in a legal context there in Colorado. What is the sort of legislative situation at the state level of Colorado with psychedelics that leads you to be able to do this?
Yeah. So 2022, there was a proposition laid out by the legislative here in Colorado to legalize on a regulated front as well as personal use of psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, non-peyote mescaline, and ibogaine. Once that was voted in, it opened up the personal use side, which we work under, to be able to gift DMT for those who are choosing to use it, and then hold a bona fide ceremonial, spiritual ceremonial space for those choosing to use DMT. So that's how we are legally allowed to do so here in Colorado.
Excellent. I hope that I didn't misdescribe it, but this is good to know. And there was a regulated side of things that was coming through. Can you talk a little bit about what the sort of like the more regulated side of psychedelics is looking like in Colorado?
Yeah, there are regulated healing centers that are using certified facilitators and therapists to administer psilocybin therapy um, for personal use and therapeutic reasons. But that's all regulated and how would you describe the facilitation?
Yeah,
It's
so that regulated side looks like red tape all over, right? So the grow facilities for the mushrooms have to be licensed through the state of Colorado. There's one testing facility that's the regulated testing facility for all the natural medicines, and then licensed facilitators, whether that be clinical, meaning that they are a licensed therapist or a doctor. And then there's also a secondary side of non licensed individuals who are like guides essentially, but they do call them facilitators working within licensed healing centers. And so far here in Colorado, it's only for psilocybin so far that's up and running with the healing centers, the licensed facilitators, and the regulated mushrooms to be used clinically in those spaces.
and there are state approved programs to train those facilitators and give them that specific license.
Hmm. Excellent. Yeah, it
So
seems
we're
like.
working, yeah, we're completely outside of that.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like Colorado is, whether intentional or not, positioning itself in the United States as being at least a front runner for the institutionalizing of psychedelic facilitation in the obviously the very regulated sort of classical model of the thing, as well as the what I would personally categorize as a kind of cognitive liberty issue of allowing people
Yeah.
also to adults to consent to consume these things in a variety of contexts and for other adults to like support them in doing that. There's obviously going to be problems in that. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, it's interesting and exciting to see Colorado perhaps maybe as a little bit of an experiment, setting itself up as an experiment. But it's cool to hear.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, on the personal use side, it's pretty amazing that we're allowed to grow magic mushrooms at home, consume them as we will. Yeah, that cognitive liberty aspect of it is really, really awesome. I think that's important and awesome that you bring that up because to choose what we do as adults, I think is really, really important around these natural medicines.
I think that the regulated side has its own place as well, but maintaining that broad scope for the personal use is going to be really key in moving forward with this, setting the standard for other states to follow.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. I can appreciate why, I could appreciate why there would be heavily regulated and systematized sort of paths for accessing psychedelics in certain scenarios, especially when it comes to people with significant health issues or needing lots of, well, insurance funding is actually one way of thinking about it. Uh,
Yeah.
and also, psychedelics aren't like the typical medicine, right? Like I don't think they benefit the person or society if they're exclusively contained within the established systems of like medical administration. Just the nature of them, I think, really could thrive in that environment, but we as a people would not thrive if that was the only environment that we had access to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well stated.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about DMTx then. So what is it? Like, give us the rundown of what this thing is. What's the molecule? What puts the X on the end of it? Yeah.
Yeah, all the things. So yeah, I mean, it stands for extended state DMT, or target controlled IV infusion of dimethyltryptamine. So Andrew Gallimore coined the phrase DMTx, the X meaning extended state. Just a lot easier to say than all the
Mhm.
other words. But to be specific, we are talking about NN dimethyltryptamine and not 5-methoxy DMT. Um, I think that's important to point out, just because there's a lot of traction with 5-MeO these days, and we get asked that question a lot. Actually, are we prolong injecting 5-MeO? And that's not what we're doing. We are working with NN dimethyltryptamine,
Can you talk a
just to
little
be
bit
specific.
about the differences there and why? I assume most people who are tuning into a interview about DMTX have some working knowledge of the difference between NN-DMT and 5-methoxy DMT. But can you give us a little, just like a quick rundown of why the characterization of these being different is important?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think number one is just the experience is very different. NN is incredibly visual, immersive in the experience. And 5-methoxy is kind of what people proclaim that God molecule, and being wrapped in just the bright white light, not very visual. But on the molecular aspect, if you looked at the molecule, NN just does not have that 5-methoxy group attached to that position on the indole ring. So huge difference molecularly, as well as experientially, of the experience of that molecule.
Yeah. And there's also still some question about safety of continuous infusion with 5-MeO. NN has already been established through previous studies to be safe for extended infusion. And I know that there's some research being done on 5, but I don't think that that safety has been established yet. So
Yeah.
I can't work with that molecule yet.
Mhm. And so what does this extended state process entail? Like what's happening? How do you make this extended state? Because from what I understand, DMT is very rapidly metabolized upon consuming it. So much so that the only way is to have an experience with DMT is to either smoke it or intravenously inject it, or to combine it with other chemicals that change its metabolism, like what's done with ayahuasca. So, what is it that's happening? What is this process that allows the DMT to become extended state DMT?
Well, we don't have the constraints of working with an MAOI. So when DMT is made into an intravenous stable solution, we can hook it up to an anesthetic pump and through an IV maintain a level that is right for the participant. And so it's rapidly metabolized, but through the continuous infusion, we can maintain whatever state they would like to be at.
Yeah, so we're essentially offsetting the body's metabolism. So we're infusing a certain amount of DMT per minute to basically offset the body's metabolism to stay in a stable state within the DMT experience. And that's what we do with that anesthetic pump.
And can you tell me a little more about what this anesthetic pump is and where it comes from as a technology?
It comes from hospitals. It's just basically a standard hospital anesthetic pump that holds a large syringe, and we use, hospital grade microtubing and run that into an IV. So it's readily available technology, and we just use that to adjust the basal rate as well as administer boluses throughout the experience, and monitor that continuous infusion.
Basal is like this the level people are at, and bolus is just
Yeah,
like
that would,
more. Is that right?
yes, correct. Yeah, the basal rate would be like the continuous infusion rate, whereas a bolus would be like a quick injection, if you will, a quick increase in flow to produce like a more intense effect.
And so, what kind of experiences are people having here? Like, well, I guess okay, maybe that's not the right question yet. So you're saying like you can get someone into the state and you can keep them there and you can modify their levels. So like how long do people stay in? Are we talking 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 hours?
Yeah, kind of all over the place. But yeah, as little as 30 minutes and as long as 5 hours is our longest experience that we've run so far. Um, yeah. So, I mean, to kind of back up a little bit, how that looks is yeah, they get an entry bolus injection, so an accelerated amount of DMT to go into the state. And that looks different for every person. So, one thing that we do with each individual is we individualize the experience for them. So, we have pretty in depth conversations with each participant of kind of where do they want to go, and through well we've done 50 sessions now, that experience and taking data points on that, we can pretty accurately get somebody where at least they think they want to go and adjust it as the experience goes. So we give them an initial bolus, and then we set a certain flow rate of milligrams a minute of DMT to sustain them there. And then with that anesthetic pump, we can adjust the amount of DMT flowing into them to really like target a comfortable DMT experience for them.
Hmm. And so how deep are people just like picking a level and they're like, yeah, I want to just look around and have everything look like I'm seeing the fractal organization of the molecular expression of life around me, or are they like, oh, I'm looking to get to get to Sirius. I'm on my way to the Pleiadians. I'm looking to go as deep as possible. Like,
Yeah.
what are people like? What depth are people going, and are they staying in that depth the whole time? Do people ride it like a roller coaster? Like
Yeah.
what do people looking for in that kind of thing?
I mean, all of the above. Yeah, we're seeing people are coming in with different levels of experience, different expectations, and different anxiety levels. And so we're seeing people who are, wanting a lower state, maybe just some really nice visuals and a body high, to people who want to blast off and go as deep as they can,
Yeah.
and everything in between. And yes, within the experience, once they sort of reach what we consider cruising altitude, a level where they're comfortable and can self-regulate and take a minute to breathe and look around, then from there we can also give them additional boluses to give them like a wave to ride a little bit deeper, or we can move them up in the state or back down to a more comfortable level. So we're seeing everything as far as desired effects go.
Yeah. And I mean, to answer your question directly, yes. I mean, some people we put in the state and they stay there the entire duration of their
Mhm.
experience. Other times it does look more like a roller coaster, and that can be for many different variables. Somebody might have to go to the bathroom, so we can bring them down and then put them back into the space. So sometimes they just need a little break from such a peak experience. So we can bring them down to a very low level for 20, 30 minutes, have something to eat, take a drink, and then we can pop them back into the state. So it kind of looks really however people would like it to look.
Are people like I'm curious, like for myself, if I imagine being in like the depth of intensity as far as I've gone with DMT, like to that peak of it, I can't imagine I'd be able to say, "Oh, can I come down a bit? I need to go to the bathroom." It's like, how are people communicating in and out of? I guess I could say that, but I don't know if objectively I would be saying intelligible words, right? So,
Yeah.
how
Yep.
do people communicate their needs during these sessions?
Well,
Yeah. They just are able to speak. That's the
Huh.
one unique thing about IV administration. I think what we're finding is differently than smoking, it's very smooth. So even though you're at that crazy depth that people have experienced through smoking, what happens is that that jolting kind of like confusing uh enveloped experience settles out to where now you are able to actually like dissociate from that deep experience and say, "Hey, I need a break."
Wow.
It's pretty amazing, actually, that dual agency, as we call it, that you can be as far as people have ever experienced in DMT and still be able to check back in with us.
Wow. And what is you said your longest session has been 5 hours. What was the longest session you've done where someone, like, what was the longest length of time someone has been at? Like, I assume there's a peak level after which point they dissociate or something, like they would forget the experience. Like, what is well, A, is that true? B, what is the longest amount of time someone has stayed in at like peak administration dosage?
A couple of hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So like 2 hours for sure. I was looking back at my notes and yeah, about 2 hours that like shot them in and they stayed there for that long. Yeah. Um,
and that's looking at objective dosing, but so much of this is subjective. And we've had people that have been at surprisingly low infusion rates that are describing, an immersive world that might sound like a breakthrough state. So a lot of this is difficult to quantify.
yeah, it's hard to quantify the subjective experience that somebody's having. Yeah. And it doesn't seem that dose is 100% related to that. Somebody can just be more affected by a lower dose than others.
Yeah, sometimes less is more, but we
Yeah.
have had some people who have requested very high doses and been able to maintain um, apparently very deep levels.
Yeah, and we've never reached that amnesia level with somebody. It does seem to be a pretty safe molecule, and like looking at dosage wise, like what Rick Strassman kind of claimed is amnesia level. I mean, you're getting up into like zero 0.7, zero 0.8 milligram a kilogram level. I mean, for most of it, that would be like 100 milligrams of DMT all at once. Like we're just not reaching those levels. I mean, one, for safety, but secondly, like there's just no need to go that high with anybody. You can have
And to clarify,
incredibly
like
large.
average smoking for like a full breakthrough would be somewhere between like 30 and 50 milligrams.
Yeah.
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 So we're talking
So
more than double. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the IV, for typically like a 70, kilogram person or something like that is around 25 milligrams for that full breakthrough dosage. So it's a little bit less than smoking, but similar. Yeah.
It makes sense. It's going straight through the main line.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, much greater bioavailability there.
Yeah.
Mhm. So let's take a little break from DMTx before I want to ask you about the experiences, both on the participant ends and on the facilitator side of things. But I want to get a little sense of the background of each of you and how you came independently to this work, and then also um, like collectively towards it. So um, maybe we'll start, Hayley, with you, and then Kevin will move on to you. Hayley, what is your background? Like, how did you end up being the nurse on staff for DMTx?
Well, I've been a nurse for 16 years, and I've worked in a wide variety of settings. But throughout my career, I've always sort of kept tabs on what MAPS is doing in psychedelic research, and sort of been waiting and looking for an opportunity like this to come along. I mean, I remember back in the late 90s in high school in New Mexico, hearing about Rick Strassman recruiting for volunteers in room 531 at the University of New Mexico for his, you know, DMTx or DMT experiments and studies. And, that really sparked an interest that stayed with me. And it seemed for most of my career that, Western medicine and Western culture is so far removed from alternative medicine and psychedelics, and there's just been this you know like it's taken a long time to see them merge and combine in a you know therapeutic way, in a beneficial way. So I've been waiting for this for a long time, and here it is.
What was the transition like? Like, do you still work as a nurse in the hospital, or like how did you get to the point of like, oh, here's this opportunity, this is the next step I'm taking in my career?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I still work as a nurse. I have worked in a variety of settings. Currently, I'm also working in a ketamine clinic and learning a bit more about the therapeutic side of psychedelics. But I met Kevin independent from medicine, from hospital setting, and we got to talking about what he does, and it just so happened that his passion aligned with this lifelong interest that I had. And I saw this opportunity here in Colorado that is really exciting to make this personal experience accessible to people. So I wholeheartedly jumped in with both feet.
Cool. Kevin, what is this lifelong passion of yours? How did you get into the DMTx thing?
Oh man, I mean, it's been a very long road. I first consumed mushrooms in college, and just kind of changed my perspective on everything. I immediately came home from that spring break down in Florida and started growing magic mushrooms. I mean, this is 25, 26 years ago now. And, how all that led me to DMT is kind of interesting, but, I always loved the band Tool, and it was like, where's this artwork coming from? And then came across Alex Gray, and then Rick Strassman's The Spirit Molecule book, and my degrees in biology and chemistry. So it seemed the next likely thing I can give this a try, but I'm not going to go find it. I was living in Salt Lake City at the time. So I extracted DMT for the first time, early 2000s, tried a whopping 10 milligrams in a crack pipe from the gas station down on the corner. Nothing happened other than my lips went numb and coughed out some nasty tasting smoke. That was kind of the intro to DMT for me, and kind of put it aside, with mushrooms. And I was going to Arizona to a peyote church and experiencing, mescaline in that way, and just kind of continued to explore psychedelics for a long time. 2016.
Wait, can we pause for a second? Sorry, I hate to interrupt you in the middle of your story. I'm getting there's like a clicking noise. Somebody might be fidgeting. There's like a,
I don't know. Is it me? Is it my fingers?
I don't know, but it was starting to get a bit distracting. So if either of you happen to be fidgeting, do your best not to, or fidget quietly.
Okay. Fidget quietly.
So, sorry, you were saying,
do we need to back up because all the fidgeting, or?
No. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll just leave this in, and it'll feel like a really human moment. Because hey, we all fidget, right? I had to train myself to do it as quietly as possible under the table. Totally. So sorry, you were saying, did you say at 16? You were
2016.
2016. Please continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2016, Andrew Gallimore and Rick Strassman wrote a paper introducing the idea of DMTx. I didn't pick up on it then. I think just an important aspect to point out. I actually had been living in Ohio during this time for a couple of years, which is where I'm from. I moved back from Salt Lake City to Ohio. And on a podcast called Psychedelics Today, Joe Moore and Kyle introduced DMTx, that it was a possibility here in Colorado. And this was a group run by Daniel McQueen of Medicinal Mindfulness. And I just jumped at the opportunity to apply, and not having any idea, like thinking that this was like a research study, like a federally legal study to do DMTx. I was accepted, came out to Boulder, Colorado in 2018 to the first like retreat. Found out that in the end, it was a training program, essentially to train experienced psychonauts, if you will, to prepare ourselves for such an experience. What is it going to look like, and continue to follow through with that program. Post-COVID, getting through all that, the idea of traveling internationally to do it legally and things like that. And then, with the Natural Medicine Health Act here in Colorado passing, it was like, wow, we can actually just do this here in Colorado. So in 2023, I was the first psychonaut to have the experience. So that's how I came across all this craziness. And, since then I've had 6 of the experiences myself, and Hayley and I parted ways early last year, about this time last year in 2025, to do this on our own. And yeah, the funny story about that, I think the first question I ever asked her is, how do you feel about injecting DMT into people? So yeah, she jumped 2 feet in, so yeah, and it's been amazing ever since. Like I said, we've done 50 of these sessions for people now, and they're just going amazingly. It's such beautiful work. I left the professional world of doing biomedical stuff. I worked as a geneticist for a long time, for 15 years professionally, and doing this is just, leaving that corporate structure, coming and doing this is just amazing.
Wow, that's definitely a big shift, like connected and lateral in a really significant way.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can, let's get back into the experience, about the experience itself, because the technology of it and the capacity for what this technology can do, like these are all interesting things. But the thing that makes this whole conversation so interesting is where people go, right? So, I guess, where does the first question get here? Well, first off, let's say, why are people choosing to do this, right? So there's an obvious one of they're curious what it's like, right? But what are sort of the range of reasons? I mean, of course, like the ultimate reason is for personal use, but people on a personal level come in with different reasoning behind why they want to experiment or explore DMT or DMTx. What are some of the reasons that you see, like the common reasons and the ones that have been strange reasons? Yeah.
Strange reasons, yeah. The Pleiades, starseed children reasons, for sure. I think people have, the UFO stuff, but I think ultimately, like that curiosity of the state.
Wait, pause for a second. Pause. You can't just say, the UFO stuff and then move on, okay? what UFO stuff? What are we talking about here? And then we can go into the more common stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think believing that there's like contacting extraterrestrial beings, right? I mean,
through DMT.
The DMT world is full of entities, right? Like, God, what's his name?
Jay Brown.
Yeah, just wrote the book. I'm looking at it. Sorry, I'm staring away from the computer. But
is it the DMT Entities Field Guide?
Yeah, yeah.
I just got that
Brown.
for Christmas from a friend of mine. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
It's a fun read.
It's a fun read. And we just had somebody here that was trying to connect the gray aliens with owls, and was interesting in that aspect. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big UFO guy. I find it interesting to watch those, on Netflix and whatnot. The documentaries about it. I think it's a good, just like, blank out and watch something. I'm not super deep into it, but I think people try to make a connection there that they are, connected somehow with UFO encounters
or entities, non-corporeal entities in general. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you look at DMT as a technology for communication, as a lot of people seem to, then you have these people that would like to explore how that looks. Like, let's dive in deeper and see if we can discover communication code. What messages can we bring back from these otherworldly places? There's always the phenomena of people expressing that the DMT landscape feels more real than real, and so that just lends itself to interpreting lots of different imagery as being some kind of communication.
Yeah. So I think from people wanting to map the space, whether that's mathematically, like looking at the geometry and actually looking at equations of what that geometry mathematically looks like,
cool
to the land. Yeah, to the landscapes of like, can we actually like geographically map this space, whether that's like what the landscapes look like, just like Earth, can we map that space? If it's a real space, and then the entities, can we map those entities like David J. Brown did in that amazing book, like all the common entities that people see? Can we communicate with them? If it's real, can we have that communication and bring back information to better our world, that type of thing? I think ultimately just the curiosity and adventure in the whole thing. It is incredibly niche to be able to stay in the DMT state extendedly. So I think sometimes we've had people come, it's just the next thing, right? Like, I've crossed pole to pole in the earth. I've climbed all the, 7 continents, mountains, what's next, and I think the psychedelic world is bringing that, especially something niche like DMTx.
And with more research being done about, potential effects of psychedelics on creativity and lateral thinking and in personal life and in business, and how it can be beneficial to help people feel unstuck at different levels of life. I think that there's a lot of intention to just sort of explore and be able to open their mind to new possibilities, rewire their thinking.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next question. Well, I have 2 excitement. One is like, I would love to just chew on this idea of like a DMT as like a molecule for communication, especially since it is a secondary metabolite produced by so many freaking plants, and all secondary metabolites serve some role in communication or interaction. Maybe we are tapping into the Gaian mind. Thank you, Dennis McKenna, for introducing that idea to me. I think it was like Lovelock that came up with the Gaian theory, but McKenna talking about these molecules as sort of like access points into the mind. Let's take a short ad break here. Now, I have been interested in the Amanita muscaria mushroom for several years now. since maybe I was a kid playing Super Mario Brothers and seeing that interesting looking mushroom there. But for a number of years since I interviewed a woman named Amanita Dreamer back many, many episodes ago about the benefits of the Amanita muscaria mushroom. I've also interviewed another person, Baba Masha, on microdosing Amanita, and I've been curious about that too for quite a while. However, I never followed through because it seemed like the landscape was questionable as to the kind of supply I was getting. And I wanted to be sure that if I did try this, I got it through a reliable source. Well, I did. And I underwent my first microdosing protocol with Amanita muscaria mushrooms. And well, I'll make a video about it when the time comes, but the company that I got that Amanita from is called Emmenterra. I had such a positive experience with this company and with their products that I am, well, here we are with an affiliate arrangement, and they have sponsored this episode. If you are personally curious to try some Amanita muscaria yourself, or you'd like to try any of their other products, you can check out Emmenterra at jameswjesso.com/AMENTARA, Emmenterra. If you use the promo code ATTM22, you'll get 22% off your first order. Links to this are going to be in the description to this episode, as well as a reminder of the promo code there. But yeah, go check them out. And of course, hey, you know where the comment section is. If you try out their Amanita, I'd love to hear how it goes for you, so you can comment below. That aside, I know people are going in for personal reasons, personal use, right? And in that is part of some of the personal reasons people have, hoping that it'll address some condition or symptom that they have. Like, I know that you guys aren't providing any kind of medical treatment in any way, but I mean, like, I could be going into a dance class hoping that it fixes my depression, but it's not a medical thing, right? So do people go in hoping to resolve things in themselves? And if so, has anyone reported back to you like any spontaneous changes, or like maybe you want to be conscientious about how you talk about this, not to give people unfair expectations about what's possible. But I am curious, like, has anyone come in and either, oh, wow, that makes sense, but also how spontaneous, or like, whoa, that happened afterwards, like this resolved? That's crazy. Anything like that?
Yeah, we've had a couple of people coming in with different intentions around that. And we've also had a few people that have been surprised by their experience. We had one person who was coming in purely to explore the psychedelic states and ended up confronting some earlier life trauma and getting a very clear message that they needed to explore that in greater depth before moving on to the next psychedelic level. And it ended up being a very positive experience. And
Yeah.
I think, keeping in communication, it sounds like there's some transformative ability. So I hope, that they're building on that outside of this. But yeah, I mean, we do see different experiences that end up potentially having a therapeutic benefit, just like starting exercise or changing your diet or any other non-medical resource.
Yeah, I think at least temporarily, being flooded with DMT, a couple hundred milligrams over an hour or more, does seem to have, like, you feel, what do I want to say, like, oh
Refreshed.
yeah, for sure, like anti-inflammatory. You feel lubed up, like your body just feels good. And it is, I do want to say it's temporary. But during that time frame, you just feel really good. And a lot of people feel incredibly rested after the experience, believe it or not. We've had two people actually fall asleep.
Wow.
And it's like, that's just what they needed, like they just needed some sleep. We did an EEG on Hayley, and her brain literally just turned off and went to sleep, like
Frontal lobes, like default mode network turned off fully immersed in the experience, but it it was the sensation of having the most deep, restful sleep I could ever imagine,
Wow.
but yet still this external awareness and a feeling of being, protectively wrapped in blankets of fractals by the entities. And afterwards, I mean, like Kevin said, just feel feel very good all around.
Yeah. And it's something that we've commonly heard, like whether people are tracking on like an Apple Watch or something, like they'll actually like statistically show that they're sleeping better. Their sleep pattern has gotten better. And it does seem to be temporary again, but it's really awesome, even if it's for a couple of weeks to like look like you're sleeping better. Um, a guy just reported the other day that he's able to drop into meditation way easier now, like with no substances. He can just meditate and go super deep, which is
Wow.
really cool to hear. Yeah.
And we recently worked with a hospice patient as well. Well, I guess at the time he was still palliative care, and in conjunction with his prescribing physician and supervised, he was fully able to consent and was asking for a psychedelic experience, and so we offered that to him, and it seemed to be um, deeply therapeutic in the sense that he found renewed joy in life despite his rapid decline, and
Mm.
it had a lasting impact on how he interacted with his family
Yeah.
and how he approached his own condition. So that was really exciting to see.
Also, I imagine that was a very rewarding experience to be a part of helping this person go through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Hmm. Um, I mean, not to take away from the poignancy of the last story that you said, I have this curiosity around some anecdotes, like Paul Stamets saying that he took what, like something like 7 grams of mushrooms in the top of a tree during a thunderstorm, and he cured his stutter, or
Right.
like Andrew Weil talking about how taking LSD and then it like he never had an allergy for cats after that or something. Has anyone told the story of like after their DMTx, like, oh, like I don't know why, but I just don't need my glasses anymore, or like, or like anything, any like really weird off the wall, like wow, I wasn't expecting that.
No, I don't think we've heard any crazy stories like that. I shouldn't say crazy, but unique experiences like that. No. I think like intentionally if you went into something like that, because I think Paul talks about like he just like that was his mantra during that whole experience, like stuck in the
Mm,
tree with the lightning of just stop stuttering now, stop stuttering now, stop stuttering now, right? And so I think if somebody came in, I mean, who knows what the possibilities are around that, you know what I mean? Like just yeah, having a mantra and intentionality around changing something in their life. Who knows?
Yeah, nothing surprising or unexplained yet.
Yeah.
yeah.
To
I
to
mean,
be determined.
yeah, I don't want to like, I know there's like this weird way of like making it a magic bullet thing or trivializing anything by being like, can it just randomly fix my tinnitus, like, or something like that. Or like, I don't know. All of a sudden I just knew how to play the guitar. But it's like, to me, uh, like being in DMT in that way for so long is like, well, what is like I'm genuinely like, what is possible? Right. Like I don't
Mm.
want to have a magic bullet of assuming anything is possible or will be possible. But like out of watching it happen, like what are the spontaneous stories that emerge? So that's why I was asking the sort of like sillier end of it, because I'm genuinely just curious about this new technology. Like, I mean, don't mean the whole thing of being able to put someone through a DMT state like that is a brand new technology, and I'm ultimately curious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw one woman who went in and ended up confronting um, the external constraints that she felt have been placed on her life, on how she presents herself, and she's coming from a very accomplished professional place as an adult, but she ended up confronting a lot of these expectations throughout her childhood and even adult life, And she came out of it with a renewed sense of autonomy and individuality. And I think that, that was confronted very intentionally and hopefully created a lasting change for her.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, I definitely think there's that potentiality of those aha moments within these states of somebody like really changing their lives for the better, you know. I don't know so much about learning how to play guitar. Tinnitus going away specifically. I have tinnitus really bad, and that hasn't gone away. If anything, I feel like I just hear that DMT hum all the time now. But
for better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse. Yeah, totally.
I mean, we've had plenty of people explain feeling like a sense of connectedness and seeing like a lattice work throughout creation. I guess similar to like an Indra's net type concept, and feeling like new connectedness to family. We've had people who have, wanted to return to a more connected family life afterwards, or have felt more connected to a partner.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically have been shown, not that I can do it, but how telepathy works, right? In that connective space. And I think it's possible to have shared experiences. And that's one thing that we want to attempt. We did do 3 people at one time, which we learned a lot from, but didn't quite hit the connectiveness in that experience for many different reasons. But I think we'd like to step back into that, of especially a couple of people who maybe are already pretty in tune with each other, and see what can come out of doing, 2 people at once in that situation. I mean, Hayley and I have had connective experiences, not in the DMTx session, but just in DMT states. So I think there's something to explore there. The other aspect I think that is interesting, I think I might have just lost my train of thought. Sorry, man.
That's okay. I got another. We got more questions here. On the vein of like strange things. Now I'll get you to explain it a little bit more in advance before you tell me, because I know that you understand or know about the thing I'm about to tell you about, and then you can explain what you've seen in your sessions. Is this DMT laser thing, right? So I don't know if people have heard about this yet, but I'm getting a lot of people messaging me being like, "Have you heard of this yet?" I'm like, "I have," and wow, curious. But can you tell me, what is this, like the terrible phrasing, the DMT laser thing? And have you had anyone come through and experiment with it, with the DMTx?
Yeah, I mean, totally.
Yeah, it's pretty big right now.
Yeah. So Danny Goler, he's a good friend of ours. I actually reached out to him to just ask how could we help, because I heard about, I think it was when Andrew Gallimore on Substack wrote a pretty deep article, kind of like anti the laser, or at least questioning it. I don't know what the right word is there. And Andrew and Danny are good friends now. It's like a good heated conversation, or however you would say that. But just looking at it from a scientific approach rather than the woo-woo side of it, which I think is great to challenge people on these ideas, right? So Danny is the one who came out for 5 hours and looked at laser for 5 hours.
Wait, so pause before you talk about looking for, what is the laser thing for people who are like, the hell are they talking about? What?
Yeah,
laser thing?
Yeah, thanks for keeping me in track.
Yeah.
So Danny, though, the DMT laser, what it is he proclaims that if you look at a laser and it's a red spectrum, 530 nanometers, something like that. I could be getting that wrong, so don't quote me on that. Is you smoke DMT, and it's not a breakthrough state. You're at like a low level DMT state, and you look at a laser that you can see a code. And Danny calls it the code of reality. We've both done it, and surprisingly enough, we saw code, and it's not zeros and ones. It looks a lot like it's like characters.
It sort of seems like maybe what somebody's background experience, what their frame of reference is, but it's been described as like katakanji or Sanskrit or Hebrew. Um, so it has elements of all of these types of known writing, but yet it's definitely its own distinct alien sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
And it's
there
stable, right? Like
is,
that's what makes it interesting.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're shining a flashlight into a dark room and you're illuminating what's in the beam. So you're not looking directly at the laser. You're looking along the beam of light into this room, and under the effects of DMT, it seems to open up and illuminate a much deeper space. And when you move up and down, the code that you eventually see in that beam of light stays stable in its own place. So if you move your head down and are looking up, you might see another line of code above that. And the crazy thing is it has its own object permanence, and it's
Yeah.
easily replicated, almost 100% success rate with people who attempt to see it.
Yeah, yeah, especially with the DMTx. So yeah, to answer that question is, yeah, people are coming to us wanting to do the DMT laser on DMTx. And usually it's, well, 100% of the time it's after they've had their like peak experience. And then we hold them at a very low level. We're talking like micrograms a minute of DMT, and allow them to just look at the laser. And Danny sent us 4 spectrums of lasers, kind of a near UV, a blue, a green, and the red. And the red seems to be the easiest, but yeah, we've had like 100% success with the extended state looking at the laser, seeing the code. It's pretty
Yeah,
wild.
And
but
part of the
as
go ahead.
as one of our participants said, he's looking at the code at the end of his DMTx session, and I mean, he's like, wow, it's there, it's definitely there. But then afterwards, it's like, and then what? Now you're left with more questions than answers. So
Right.
nobody has really brought back communication through this or information about what this could actually mean. So it's a big DMT mystery.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yes. Yeah.
And then maybe we don't need to conquer the mystery under the thumb of conceptual understanding,
Yeah.
Right.
So how varied are people's experiences? Like, do people pretty much, I mean, okay, so with the laser thing, 100% of the time, they're like, oh yeah, shit, there's that code. But when people come in outside of the whole laser thing, just people are coming in, do you notice that people tend to have a pretty consistent, like, yep, they see entities, yep, they enter a particular domain, so on and so forth? Or is it more varied than that?
Yeah. Super varied. Yeah. I track the entity encounters, not necessarily the types. I guess I do in my notes, but for me, it's just yes or no at this point. Did they have, entity contact or not? It's not 100% of the time, but sometimes it's like very visual, like the entities are up in their face, especially the mantis seems to be there quite a bit. But sometimes it will just be, are you seeing entities? And it's like, no, they're around. So it's like you'll see this language come out of them, like they and them and things like that, although they're not like seeing an entity in the space. So like with the entities, to answer your question, it's not always. A lot of times people just say they're in a space with a lot of colors, not even necessarily fractals, just like ribbons of light kind of flying through their visual, view. What else have we had?
A lot of space travel. A couple of spaceships reported.
Yeah, alien
like
landscapes.
literally like flying through the cosmos kind of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of crystalline geometric landscapes. Like people are just like, I'm not seeing entities, I'm not seeing fractals. I'm just like in a different world. And they'll kind of try to, describe that world, pink skies and crystalline landscapes type of thing, but just kind of chilling somewhere else.
We had one participant who went into his fractal landscape. He actually sent us a couple of AI pictures of as close as he could create to what his experience was, just very geometric, Dr. Seuss and Escher-ish. And within that space, he just started jamming out to the rhythm of the DMTx music. He sat up during the experience with his eye shades on and appeared to be in his own DMT entity disco for a good half an hour. Just
dancing. Yeah,
wow.
Just dancing.
Do they have to be concerned about the IV in that circumstance? Is it in the hand or is it in the forearm, the IV?
I try to put it mid forearm just so that they have the range of movement. So and it's taped in place, so we're sitting right there constantly monitoring, so they have enough room to sit up, reposition, roll over if they need to,
dance a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, from the pump to them also is about a 5 foot long line, and then the pump is super transferable. I mean, it's about the size of a toaster, so I mean, like, we can pick it up and move with them if we need to. We're not like, clinical, like on an IV pole and all those things. Like, it's a very ceremonial space, and they can move and sit up and dance with the energy of the space. Frequency has been a huge what do I want to say, like a talking recurring theme. So like, whether it's music or the sound of the DMT space itself or the entities or something, like vibration seems to be really, really huge. So like, different levels of the DMT seem to have a different vibration, and you kind of regulate your own body's vibration with that state to stay in those stable states. That's something that we hear a lot, and we've experienced, like, even to the point of like one person saying they got their bell rung by a giant gong in this temple, and they came back and bought, 2 6-foot gongs, and they're just like, wow, this is amazing, and sent them on a life of like sound healing. That was really cool.
There does seem to be a large component with tuning into the different frequencies that you experience throughout the space. We'll use like tuning forks or crystal bowls or the recorded tracks to try and help the participants sync up with the space. It seems to provide a more sustainable experience. They can sort of release and go in a little bit deeper if they feel in tune.
Yeah, totally.
And you have a sense of like discovering like particular frequencies of crystal bowls or bells or something that you're like, oh, this one is more DMT, but this one isn't. Like you've been able to identify that outside of the DMT space.
Yeah. Well, the one, because we have this one, I forget the frequency of it right off the top of my head right now, but yeah, there's this one yellow bowl, crystal bowl we have that just like people geek on it. It's like, that is the DMT bowl. You know what I mean? So yeah, we've been able to slowly pick up on that for sure.
And we've seen, as we increase the dosage or give somebody a bolus and there's a little bit of discord or discomfort, you see like tension, body language, face, or they might even say that they're having a difficult time or it's really intense. We found that striking a tuning fork and holding that next to their head or their chest where they can feel the vibration seems to sort of help them regulate and find their comfort level within that experience.
Yeah.
And
smell
do people
also.
Smell, yeah.
Go ahead.
Makes sense. It's another kind of frequency.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions about that. One, is it by default a quiet space and people elect music, or do you have music playing and people can elect silence? That's one question. And the other question is whether or not anyone has experimented with a vocalization to reach harmony with the DMT frequency sounds, and any feedback or reports from that.
Yeah. So Yeah, we always have music playing. We have some selected tracks that seem to really vibe in the state. However, people do and have elected for silence at certain aspects. Like the music just seems too disorienting for them, so silence is better.
Or they've brought in their own music and requested specific tracks, sometimes on repeat through the entire experience. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
quite a variety.
yeah. We always ask people because some people do, just have certain music tastes, right? So if they bring a playlist in, that's what we're gonna play for them. And we always ask to just be open. Like if someone's bugging them, like we'll change it, we'll turn it
Yeah.
down, whatever. It's their experience. So like that's what we're there for, right? Um, yeah, I've got this ohm track that I play just to kind of to the second question. And yes, some people have used like chanting vocalization in this state that really helps them for sure. Um, yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I
let's
don't know
take
how
a
to go
quick.
deeper
Well,
into that question, but yeah.
I mean, we've seen people repeat ohm and vibrate, create their own vibrations within the space. And we had one participant who writes his own music, and we listened to his tracks. So in a sense, I guess that's like him creating his own vibration in the space.
Yeah.
Hmm. Um, so on the question around like vocalization and stuff, have you like you said that people get into a stabilized place, like they're fully in the zone, but they can communicate their needs. There's a kind of stabilizing. But have you experienced anyone going into glossolalia, like speaking in tongues? Like anyone doing anything like that?
No,
No.
I mean we've had people who have yelled, expressed like an energy release very loudly, but no glossolalia. I think that there's such a dual agency, as Kevin had discussed before, where despite being completely immersed in the DMT world, you still are very much aware of your place, your body, and any external sounds, especially words from other people. So
Yeah. I have one friend who does want to do the extended state that glossolalia was part of their fundamental Christian upbringing.
Right.
I guess
Like
speaking in
Pente-
tongues. And
Pentecostal, I think. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
so it'd be interesting but that was part of their upbringing. So it wouldn't be like a sudden outburst of it, but it would be interesting if that's something that they practiced during the state for
Mm.
sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that brings me to another a question. Like we're having this conversation. We're talking about all the strange and interesting things that can happen for and to people during this state. But like, you two as facilitators, I mean, you're not under the effects. How strange does it get for you? And I mean that in the sense of like, okay, being in the space while people are doing strange things, but my experience being around other people who are deep in a psychedelic space, I'm not in it at all. My neurochemistry is unaffected by exogenous chemical influence, right? And yet I can feel like something's happening, like I'm in a space with them.
Mhm.
Strange things happen, and I'm like, wow, that was really strange. You're not just tripping, like that was weird. Um, how strange does it get for you as facilitators?
I mean, as you pointed out, sitting in the room with someone who's having a very deep experience, even if you're completely sober, can sort of impart a feeling of connection, or like you're somewhat experiencing
Mhm.
their journey as well. Um, so I think that there's sort of a synergistic movement through the journey, like somehow just intuitively knowing where they're at. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah,
even feeling altered to some aspect
yeah.
for sure. What did one guy said that it's like we've opened a portal in our ceremonial space, and that portal is always open. So there's a lot of weird things that happen down there. Even to the point where we might just be flushing saline into their IV, and they're like, "Is there DMT in that?" And I'm already feeling the DMT. It's like, man, it's just saline, you know.
Wow. Okay.
So I think there's just a gigantic amount of energy. I mean, we've had experiences down there where like the music has been completely taken over. Like it's not in my program track, and it just changes to
Weird.
something that is not anything recorded. I mean, it's like the entities just change the channel to theirs, you
I
know?
mean,
Which you
we
say
joke
playfully, I
about
assume.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, with
Yeah.
a healthy dose of skepticism, because obviously that sounds completely crazy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've experienced that. That is an objective change that we have seen that is completely inexplicable and has not happened while everyone has been sober. This only happens during the DMT
Yeah.
infusion or smoking. So that's pretty strange, but
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, watching a participant, outwardly at just like a cursory glance, there's no indication of strangeness usually. I mean, somebody lying there comfortably, usually smiling, with eye shades on, and Kevin and I are sitting there just playing some crystal bowls, watching, checking in occasionally.
Yeah.
I think just you have to be really immersed in the space to start feeling the subtle energy shifts. And
Yeah. I mean, people have reported things like constantly checking in, like, is that our hand on their chest or something? It's like, man, we're not touching you, or like they're hearing voices behind them. And it's just like, there's no voices in the music. There's, no lyrics to it. We're
we're
not
not talking.
talking, or they'll check in. A lot of people bring like another person with them, like a loved one or something to be in the state with them, which is really great just for that grounding source for themselves as somebody they feel really connected to. And we actually like suggest that if that's a possibility for them. So like, one guy just kept asking their loved one, like, is that your hand? Is that you touching me? And they were, totally feeling otherworldly things touching them and talking to them and stuff. So we see that kind of stuff happen on occasion. People report the whole surgery type of thing, entities working on them and dissecting them, and it all seems to be fine. They laugh at it normally.
They can feel like an entity sticking a drill up there. Was it up his
Up his
nose? Up
nose.
his nose to the center of his brain. And it seems like they report sensations, but there's no correlation with pain or discomfort necessarily.
Yeah. So
We've had people being eaten or picked apart. Sounds sort of scary, but in the space, it always seems like there's a feeling of curiosity and benevolence along with this. So no one's reported feeling distressed by these things.
No. But sitting back, listening and watching that is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
like, oh, wow,
for
your
sure.
chest just got cut open and they're taking your organs out.
Mhm.
Wow. And you're all good with it. Yeah.
It is. I've had experiences where all of a sudden I've realized I'm being operated on and my organs are being manipulated, and I think context makes a big difference. Obviously, I was in a safe context, and I was like, "Oh, hey guys,
Right.
thank you."
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, we've heard thank you several times as well during the experience.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody will just be lying there and just expressions of thankfulness, whether it's from manipulating organs or showering them with rainbow light, or
Yeah. Feeling like they're getting recharged. Yeah. Just lots of thank you and gratitude and some life reviews and things like that are just really meaningful for people.
support for this podcast comes from you, the listeners, via our Patreon page at patreon.com/JamesWJesso. If this podcast brings you curiosity or joy or interest or distraction or a sense of edutainment or whatever reason you listen to this podcast, if you are finding value in it, please consider supporting it directly by becoming a patron on Patreon. This is my full-time job. I am the one-man operation that takes this podcast from thinking about who to host to a complete end product, all the steps along the way. And it's how I earn a living. It's how I afford my equipment and the various fees that go into producing and releasing a podcast. It's how I afford my studio space. It's how I afford to pay for my daily living expenses. And your financial support here through Patreon or a one-time donation, which I'll mention in a second, gives me the time and space I need to prepare these interviews, to prepare these podcasts, and to just give it my all. So all I'm asking for is about the price of a cup of coffee once a month. And if you could offer that, that would be great. If you would rather a one-time donation, you can do so through PayPal or Ko-Fi. Links are in the description to this episode. And if you can't offer any finances at this time, don't worry about it. Those who can do. And so we all get to have a podcast. I get to make one and you get to listen to one. And that's great. So thank you very much for signing up. And if you've already signed up, thank you so much for doing so. An extra thanks goes to the people whose names are listed in the description of this episode or on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, as those people give significantly, some of which for a very long time. So their name in the credits is an extra thank you for that. So yes, that's all for this little support break. Please do become my patron on Patreon or toss me a little tip for this episode. And links to do so are in the description to this episode. And now let's get back to our interview.
I've been having a good time. We're talking about beautiful things, interesting things, curious things. We're laughing a lot. We're talking about how positive people's experiences are. But this is not without risks. So what are some of the risks of basically, we'll say DMTx specifically, risks for psychedelics in general will overlap, of course. But what are some of the risks, psychological or medical, that people are accepting when they choose to work with DMTx, right? So there's that side of it, and then the other side of it is what are the risks for you as facilitators that you're working to minimize, mitigate, or eliminate? Yeah.
Well, I mean, medically, I think that a couple of concerns should come up. Um, where is the medicine coming from? How do we know that this is clean to be putting in my veins? And so I think working towards eliminating that risk, it's carefully extracted to 99.9% purity. There's several labs that we can use locally to test for purity, residual solvents, endotoxins, microbial contamination. So that goes a long way to mitigate the risk associated with taking this medicine like intravenously. And then, inserting the IV. I mean, very, very small risk, but it's prepped sterilely, just like it would be in a hospital setting. And ultimately, that itself is a very small risk. The DMT is pH neutral, as is the saline. So, in the case of, if the IV slips and there's an extravasation, which is a little bit of like fluid outside of the vein, um, it could potentially leave a small bruise, but ultimately, there's really not a lot of risk associated with that. Not more than you would see if you went to a hospital and had an infusion of saline, or an infusion clinic where they infuse much larger amounts of fluid. So as far as medical risks, we work really hard to mitigate, eliminate all those risks. And what else am I
Psychological.
missing? Psychological. Oh, and also medically speaking, because DMT's half-life is so short, and it's already been established in research that it's safe to infuse. There's virtually no risk of complications like serotonin syndrome. We're not using MAOIs. There's very few known interactions. So, of course, we always want to make sure that we understand what people are taking and what treatments they're currently using when they're coming into this space. And then psychologically,
Well, pause for a
um,
second before we get into
okay.
psychological. Are there any medical conditions that, well, I mean, there's a range, right? Like any medical conditions that are
Mhm.
like, oh, there's extra caution needed here, and or medical conditions that are um like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, we like you might be okay, but we don't feel comfortable like taking that risk, or you need it to be sort of like given the all clear from a doctor. And I want to keep psychological stuff like medical as in like biological issues. Is there anything that's on that sort of like yellow flag, red flag for you guys?
Well, I mean, if somebody's been taking certain medications like SSRIs for a long time, um, we just like to be aware of that. Sometimes they'll need a dose adjustment to accommodate for that, but it's not necessarily a red flag. It's more of like a light yellow flag. Um, I think cardiac health is important. If somebody has high blood pressure or heart dysrhythmias, it's important to be aware of those. And so far, we haven't talked to anyone that's had a condition that would necessarily be a rule out, but it can cause a transient increase in blood pressure and heart rate. And I think part of that might just be the cortisol, the anxiety going into the experience, because that tends to taper off rather quickly. Um,
I mean, I think overall we're working with healthy
yeah.
individuals. So to like quantify like what a certain condition would be, we haven't really encountered maybe what that is of what would rule somebody out biologically to say, that's just too big of a risk with the medicine, just because it does seem to be so safe. I don't know. Is there anything off the top of your head that you would if somebody came to us and
With a medical condition, well, like when we did the palliative care patient, I would not have independently said yes to that. Um, it was on still on the personal use side, but it was a planned request with him and his medical provider. So I think there are things that we haven't encountered yet, and I think we're always just going to err on the side of caution. But fortunately, we're really finding a lot of very healthy people who are invested in self-care are coming to us. So
yeah, I mean, most people, other than vitamins and supplements, really, they're not on pharmaceuticals. They're not. I mean, they're
yeah.
just really healthy people. You know what I mean? Which has been great.
It is also,
Yeah.
it like you said, it's a very niche thing. I imagine that, if someone's just kind of Googling psychedelics because of something in their life or where they're at with conditions, they're not going to find DMTx first.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so, how about the psychological risks, either acutely or long term?
Yeah. It's hard to speak to the long term because this is so new, right? It's going to take some like experienced psychonauts. I don't even want to put myself in that category, but I guess I kind of am. I mean, as far as we know, I mean, myself and Carl Hayden Smith are the only people who have done this 6 times. So, until we get a lot more data points on people doing this a lot, to really know the long term effects of it. But for the most part, it hasn't changed me in any sort of way. They've been great experiences. So, but I'm a pretty stable, mentally person. So, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer. I don't know. Do you have anything more to the long term
Well,
effects of it?
there's a lot of research being done on neurogenesis, neuroplasticity in the setting of like PTSD, depression, and while we're not offering that as a therapeutic benefit, it seems like there is a lot of exploration into the potential short and long-term benefits. As far as risks, I mean, we've seen people who have had a lot of anxiety, who have encountered experiences within the DMT space that are overwhelming, in for a lot of different reasons. Nothing overtly negative, and usually after dropping the level down, bringing them back down, grounding them a little bit, there's doesn't seem to be any sort of long-term or even short-term effects that are concerning. And this is still in the early stages, and just like any drug or any substance that people choose to use, of course there are potentially risks associated with that. But fortunately, I think we're seeing a lot of good things come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, one person just with that I mentioned before with the touching and the voices, that was a little jarring for him, just like making
Mhm.
sense of that. But with integration, they've been doing great, post, months later, which is really great to see. Like we talk in the psychedelic communities, with the predisposition for certain psychological ailments, I think we got to be careful with that. Um, People have to be honest with us up front, and we have to trust people with that. Luckily we did have one person who reached out that didn't disclose anything up front, but luckily actually called us and said that they did have a psychological break after some medicine use. So that ruled them out from coming and doing DMTx with us. And fortunately they disclosed that to us and didn't come out and have the experience after the fact. So that's I think it is a risk. It's a big experience. um
Definitely not appropriate for someone who's experiencing psychosis or has a history of psychotic disorders or unstabilized mood disorders. I think if somebody's acutely needing treatment for depression, PTSD, the personal exploration is probably not the best choice. I mean, hopefully in the future this will be offered in a more therapeutic context because it seems to have so many possibilities. But as of now, we really are only approving people that do have a certain degree of stability in their life.
yeah, not to rule out that in the future of licensed therapists and stuff doing this work, that clinical aspect, of course I think it could be great for things like PTSD and things. Really just change their perspective. And, the nice thing about DMTX compared to, let's say, mushrooms or anything else is just the control of it, right? It doesn't have to be this breakthrough state. It can be a very low level therapeutic dose where you could be doing talk therapy while under the experience, and like really work through things and be able to adjust that rate. Like, are you ready to go a little deeper and maybe touch and confront something? And then be able to back you off even if within a few minutes. So like there's a lot of safety around it and control around it, which is really awesome. Unlike swallowing some mushrooms and like, well,
Hoping
we're
for the
going where
best.
we're going.
Right.
Yeah,
Or ayahuasca, which a lot of people always ask us to compare it to ayahuasca, but often you don't know how light or deep that experience is going to be, and it usually comes with a lot of GI upset. And
And
the
it's
setting is
it's connected with the effect of the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, the harmines
yes,
and harmaline and
correct.
stuff. So, and that itself has
yeah,
its own
Yeah.
physiological effect. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
And unless people are testing their ayahuasca to know how much, it's kind of, you know, you don't exactly know what you're consuming on the MAOI or the DMT aspect of it, which potentially could change. But who knows? Start taking them separately and knowing your dosages and things like that.
Yeah,
But
like
that's
pharmalaska
yeah.
type dosing.
Mhm.
But still, I
Pharmalaska
mean, even with
being extracts of both that are strategically like
yes,
stabilized, then combined as like a capsule rather than the brew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
precisely. But even with that, once you ingest the substance, then you're in for the ride, whatever that may look like. Whereas this, if somebody gets to a point where they say, okay, I'm done, I want to come down, we can turn off the pump and they're clearing within 10 minutes and totally down within usually 20.
Yeah.
Sometimes 30.
Do you have any, like, I imagine you have some advice for people in aftercare, but like, do you have any like follow-up protocols, or like what I guess there's a question of, do you have particular follow-up protocols that you do with the client or like the participants, or are you just like giving them some advice? I guess the question is about like, what do you think are good follow-up protocols, either for the person or in your role as the pump managers? Yeah.
Yeah.
Pump managers. I like that.
Well, I mean, there's usually quite a bit of integration that happens on the spot in the ceremonial room before we even close the space. And then we usually invite people to hang out for a while, discuss their experience. And a lot of that seems to be beyond words. So I think it gets to a point where they're just sort of at a loss for words for their experience. And then our recommendation is, go to a calm space. We've got outdoors, super accessible here. Spend a little bit of time outside, integrate this experience. You don't have to put it into words. And then we follow up. We check back in later that day, the next day, and then a week or so down the road.
Yeah. And then we're always staying in touch with these individuals, long term, just even if it's just a check-in, how are they doing? In pre-session, we always check into what their support system is outside of us. That's really important, because, some people, their families, friends and stuff aren't really pro this. So it's important for us to understand that, so then we can craft an aftercare program around that as well. Like if they don't have a lot of support outside of here, then we'll stay in touch with those guys on a different level comparatively to somebody who's going home to their home psychedelic circles and have a lot of support around it, be able to talk around about it, and those type of things.
Mm-hmm. So I have two final questions. One of which is, from what I understand, being in the unique position that you're in, as being able to offer DMTx, that you're also participating in collecting data to contribute to research. What does that look like? And is there anything that you think that you would feel interested and curious about being researched around DMTx, that, having been facilitating, you have this sense of like, oh, this particular thing, it would be very cool if there was research done around it?
Yeah. My notebook is full of data points. A lot of that mostly has to do with the protocol itself of how to administer DMT and what we're finding. And I think that's incredibly useful. So I've been sharing that information specifically with Andrew Gallimore. They're getting ready to open up ATTMind. And so that, as far as I know, they will be the only other location doing DMTx. So it's like, how can we help them to continue to expand in a really good way of how we offer this medicine to people? And then therefore be able to collect information, giving the experience the best way we can, right? Getting people to where we want to get them safely and adjust the dosages and all those kind of things. And then where can we go from there? Right now it's so new. It's like, how do we just like drive the ship, right? So that's the big thing where we're at. How can we safely do this? How can we maintain this? How can we alter the experience? How can we adjust it individually for everybody else? Because the initial research in Imperial College and the Swiss team in Basel was just one dose of DMT bolus injection and then sustain that for a particular amount of time. That's it. No adjustments. Like, here you go. We're going to keep you there. Okay, we're done. Let's take some blood data, look at fMRI and things like that. awesome, right? Like great research, but it could really be expanded on as far as the experience itself, and then dive deeper into some of those research topics. We don't have EEGs, fMRIs. We don't have those clinical aspects to look at data points that way. So it's kind of like grassroots style. The entity points, the data points as far as we administer it.
A lot of, you know, subjective data, which is difficult to quantify, but no less important and relevant to moving forward and dialing in this process.
Yeah, I asked Rick Strassman, like, was there any like subjective results? Like, meaning, like, so one thing that's really interesting to me is that, is it just weight-based dosing? Or can we actually adjust that dosing subjectively? And what I specifically mean there is, if we took, let's say, a 50 kilogram person and a 200 kilogram person, that would be ridiculous. But yeah, like, is the dosing the same because we're bypassing the GI system? And Rick just said, well, weight-based worked for us. But even with our own data, it is so small. The average person, we're talking like the difference of 10, 20 kilograms, right? So it's like, it doesn't change that much. I mean, the difference between 25 and 30 subjectively, like milligrams of DMT on an experience, I don't know if it changes that much. And that's what I'm really trying to understand and dive into is, can I give the same dose no matter how much a person weighs, because it's going straight to the brain versus having to be metabolized in any sort of way through the GI system, if that matters? It's a good starting point to understand, but I don't think a study has really been done on dose versus subjective experience. And that's something really
Well,
interesting.
you also have the curiosity around whether or not people's genetic disposition towards how they metabolize tryptamines, or what presence of different other enzymes they have would influence the sort of the dose response experientially that you couldn't test for unless you're getting people's genetics.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because we have had some like abnormalities within what I'm talking about, of just like can take gigantic doses of DMT and it doesn't seem to affect them the same as others.
And we've had some people who have taken relatively small doses and seem to have gigantic experiences. So, I mean, we're seeing both ends of that spectrum, and it does bring up that question about genetics and enzymes that are present in each individual.
Yeah.
So the last question here is a much broader one. You talked a little bit about where you think it would be, interesting and perhaps quite useful for DMTx to integrate into the sort of medical side of things, where it could find its place there and how it could benefit. But even zooming out of just the medical consideration, like thinking about maybe the world at large, or psychedelic culture at large, or how we understand ourselves as humans, as a species, existential questions. Or how DMTx will just find its way into various pockets of culture, various sort of ways of facilitation. What do you see are kind of like your visions? Positive, that would be cool, that seems good, that might happen, and your concerns of like, this could happen, I hope this doesn't happen. Like, what are your visions and or concerns for where DMTx may find itself in the larger culture, in humanity? Yeah.
I mean, I think one of my biggest concerns is just around safety. Seeing, as there's more information about DMTx through us or through Ulysses, and it inspires other people to try the same thing themselves. I would hope that there would be a lot of harm reduction information out there, and resources to mitigate the risks of injecting DMT. I mean, that inherently can be a little bit scary, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've personally had a couple of pictures sent to me of individuals trying it on their own, and first thing that pops out to me is just like, that is clearly not pure DMT, number one. So that's kind of scary. I mean, there's so much information. I mean, people have been extracting DMT for a long period of time, right? And I think there could be the understanding or the thought that what they're extracting from Mimosa hostilis is pure. You know, that orangey DMT that most of us like have seen in our lives is pure DMT. And number one, with analytical testing that we're able to do here in Colorado, is that's not the case. You know, it's definitely got tryptamine and NMT in it at the very least. And we'll expand on that testing to understand more of the color and the oils and all those things. People speculate, but I think we're far from speculation to actually understand what all of it is, you know? Also, the technique of how they converting it to a water soluble. Do they actually understand what they're doing? You know, those type of things to get into injectable form. The other aspect is, you know, the infusion technology is readily available. I mean, you can buy these things on eBay, right? You can buy them on Amazon. You know, like there's a lot of unregulated, unlicensed, untested things that you can buy. You can even buy pumps that have been pulled out of circulation of hospitals because they're no longer FDA approved due to whether it's a software issue or they just haven't been tested because they're upgrading, right?
Yeah.
So grabbing that and understanding, I mean, a pump is, and it really isn't that hard to use. You can watch YouTube videos on how to operate these things, right? Like that aspect of it. But just hopefully people are taking the care. Like, yes, people are going to do this eventually. I don't inherently think that's bad, but I hopefully they're surrounding themselves with people that understand the technology, understand the chemistry, and understand the safety to be able to do that. I mean, I would, like I said, I would like to think that this expands not just medically, that we can explore these things on that cognitive liberty aspects of these medicines as like humanity to really understand ourselves better. But just hopefully as those groups pop up, it's just being surrounded with some professionals that understand what they're doing. Yeah, I think that's one risk.
I think it's always going to stay very niche. It's not something that everybody is going to be willing or desire to do. So I don't think it's going to be like you know, you can go to a gas station and buy
No.
like DMT pens and smoke in the park down the street. You know, it's always going to be a very intentional niche practice. But could we expand this into, you know, other settings? And um, are we going to see people using this in you know, spiritual contexts or therapeutic contexts? And I think we will.
Yeah.
It's going to expand in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, I could see it expanding first into some of the already like ayahuasca retreats, like offering something on top of that, you know, for participants coming down already interested in DMT and then being done in kind of that intentional way, kind of expanding there first. I think there are going to be small groups of people. There's very influential, very well off and very exploratory people around that are going to jump into this if it's not already being done, right? So I think that's really, really great. You know, hopefully people are just doing it safely. It's the biggest concern. Yeah.
Well, with that, we'll finish up with the question of if people want to follow up with you, maybe they've got some questions, maybe they want to know more about your facilitation. I mean, I, you know, in transparency, I've never sat with you. I don't know, so I'm not recommending anyone necessarily reach out. But if they are curious from this interview, how would they reach out to you? How would they talk with you? Maybe they bought a pump off eBay. They want to ask you whether or not they should use it or something. I don't know. How do people stay in contact with you too?
Yeah. Best way, you know, social media is always a great way. We're on X at just DreamMind on X. On Instagram, it's DreamMind Labs. Our website is DreamMind Labs. as well as dreammind.org. Takes you to the same place. We do have a 501c3 nonprofit here in the United States for education and sustainability of natural medicines, and that's the DreamMind Institute. So that DreamMind.org right now takes you to the same website as the DreamMind Labs, but we're expanding that.
Email is dreammindlabs@gmail.com.
Yeah, so social media, website. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll be sure that those links are in the show notes to this episode at jameswjesso.com and accessible through the description to this episode wherever people are checking it out. Hayley, Kevin, thank you so much. This was a very interesting conversation for me. I've been very excited for it for the last couple of weeks as we've been gearing up to do it. And I really appreciate your time today. And it was really enjoyable. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
Thanks for having us.
And cut.
Okay, that was our interview with Hayley and Kevin. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're curious to learn more about DMTx and what they're doing down there in Colorado at DreamMind Labs, you can head to dreammindlabs.com, or you can check them out on social media. For example, their Instagram page, dreammind_labs, or any of the other links that I'm going to have in the show notes to this episode, either at jameswjesso.com or in the description wherever you are checking it out. So go check them out if you're interested in further learning about what they're doing. As you heard in the middle of the episode, if you are interested in supporting this show directly and the hard and soft expenses that go into producing it, please do consider becoming a patron on Patreon or leaving me a one-time tip donation. Links to that are also in the description to this episode. You can find me on social media at Instagram, ATTMind podcast on Instagram, or at JamesWJESSO, effectively everywhere else. Honestly, I don't really like social media. I don't like what the internet is doing to me as a person. And the reality is, being that this podcast is my job, this is how I earn a living, I gotta be on there. So you'll see me there. I am periodically present, and hopefully you find my content there engaging and interesting as much as you like the long form content here of this podcast. And so check me out there. I'll leave links usually and always to my social media stuff in the description. I also have a newsletter, a Telegram, a couple of things that are a little less social media, we'll say a little less algo heavy in the description there too. So follow me there if that's your interest and curiosity. I wish we could all get off the algorithm, to be honest. I'm sure some of us find some benefit. Some of us are obviously earning a living there, and all the power to you. But holy hell, don't think this is good for us. Maybe we all just need a good dose of DMTx to counteract the effects of algo brain and realign us with some other dimensions of reality that are not filtered through the attention economy and questionable profit motives. Or not. Maybe the aliens will tell us to turn back on our phones, get deep into the algorithm. Maybe they're controlling the algorithm. I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm having a good time. It's the end of the episode. I'd like to go off a little bit, and we'll just call that there. This has been episode 206 of Adventures of the Mind. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you subscribe to be up to date on the next episode. Until then, I've been your host, James Jesso. Take care and stay curious.